Hey, y'all, I got a new desk. This is looking good now. We're moving on up in the world, okay? So right now we're going to be reacting to Scott Jennings, Lulu Navarro Garcia spar over Trump's threats to Harvard. I don't know what's going on with that. Actually, you know what? We should do a reaction to sooner or later too. There's something that's going on right now that's I don't know. I'm gonna look it up later, but I'm gonna look into it. Okay. Let's get it. My desk is crazy. I got a big desk. I'm really moving up on this, guys. Okay, Haley, you gotta turn it down. I'm really moving up on this. So, let's get it. Hold on. Alrighty.
President of the United States pushing the bounds of his executive power farther and farther across so many realms of American life, including the courts, the legal profession, the media, and elite education. Now he's going head-to-head with the nation's oldest and wealthiest institution of higher learning, Harvard University.
Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously.
The White House.
It cut that off pretty quick. What's going on, guys? Tell me about it in the comment section. Why is he beefing with Harvard right now?
Is taking on Harvard after it became the first of the elite universities to defy the administration's efforts to take on so-called woke campus policies, restrictions that the university says amount to unacceptable limits on freedom of expression. Last night, the administration froze more than $2 billion in federal grants to the university. And today, the president is threatening Harvard's tax-exempt status, suggesting in a post on his Truth Social platform that it should be, quote, taxed as a political entity, end quote, unless it acts in, quote, the public interest.
When it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear they must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place on their college campus against Jewish American students.
Trump officials portray their...
I know you guys think this is a win for the Trump administration, but I want you guys to think deep about this. University is where they debate ideas, right? Ideas should be debated in the university. Do we really think that he should be barring people from studying, having ideas? Regardless of whether you figure them woke, awake, whatever you want to call it. There's still ideas that need to be debated. So, like, Trump intervening in that it's bad. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. And he's going to damage it for a long time, the thought of just moving forward. But the ideas should be debated amongst universities. It shouldn't be forced, but it also shouldn't be ignored, you know. So I don't know what he wants to do. And this is CNN. So CNN says their part, but I don't know. Does he want to ban it completely, or does he just want to, like, you know, make it to where it's not part of the recommendation for every student to have to understand some type of whatever woke, whatever they consider woke, you know, and that could be anything. So anyway, let's go on.
Their fight against the most prestigious and liberal universities is an effort to combat anti-Semitism after contentious campus protests against the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. Harvard sees the battle differently, its president declaring the university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. Let's start with our panel, CNN contributor and co-host of the Interview podcast at the New York Times, Lulu Garcia Navarro, CNN political commentator, Republican pollster, Kristen Soltis Anderson, former senior advisor to both the Biden and Harris presidential campaigns, Adrian Elrod, and CNN senior political commentator, Scott Jennings is here. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Kristen Soltis Anderson, I want to start with you on the big picture for Harvard University and the way that the administration is doing this. Because there's $2 billion already on the line. There are billions more that could be affected. Those grants funding things like cancer research. But of course, there has been that explosion of protest. We've seen many anti-Semitic incidents on a lot of these campuses, and this has become a real lightning rod on the right. of all of the things that we have seen happen so far this week, the number of things that certainly Democrats are basically apoplectic about, how do you see this confrontation with Harvard and other elite institutions fitting in?
So a confrontation with an institution like Harvard is one where Trump has picked a very ripe target. Confidence in higher education has really been plummeting in this country over the last decade. Even as recently as 2015, Gallup found a majority of Republicans said, when you asked, do you have confidence in higher education? They said yes. And those numbers have fallen. They've fallen precipitously for Republicans, but also for Democrats. And I think part of the problem is, to quote Office Space, the question of what is it you would say you do here? That for a lot of institutions of higher education, that's not a question that they've clearly answered. And so when you ask people, why don't you have confidence? They think they veered too far off mission. Some of these institutions, as you noted, they contain multitudes, right? They do great things like cancer research, but they have other things that I think a lot of taxpayers may be saying, I don't know if I want to fund this. Trump has sensed that, and that's why he views them as such a good target.
I will say.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if you think about it, that's not bad. If taxpayers don't want to fund certain things at institutions, they shouldn't be taught. However, ideas, the universities where ideas, I said this before already. My thing is, though, if there's anti-Semitic sentiment going on, then definitely there's something that needs to be done about that. We shouldn't allow anti-Semitic sentiment on any university. But should the conversation of the war in Israel and the war on Israel and Palestine, should that be discussed? It definitely should be discussed, and he shouldn't be barring anybody from that. But however we get it.
Say, Lulu.
And to her point of people losing faith in universities and higher education, I think that's more along the lines of money. I don't think that has anything to do with Trump, conservatism, or liberalism. I think that has everything to do with money. It's so expensive to get a college degree nowadays, and I think that makes it more complicated for people to want to do it.
Institutions of higher learning have educated an awful lot of the bipartisan people who come here to Washington and end up in positions of power.
I was about to say, it's always surprising to me that Harvard is put as this kind of liberal bastion when you think about a number of Republicans and Wall Street executives who've gone there.
Yeah, well, we can put up a number of the Trump allies who attended Harvard. Now, I will say that the youngest of those that you see on your screen are about my age, so they're elder millennials, so perhaps a lot has changed.
Oh, snap. Ted Cruz. Steve Bannon, all of them have attended Harvard. Oh wow, that's a lot of people from the Trump administration.
In the intervening time, but I think I really take Kristen's point, right? For the middle of the country, beating up on Harvard is not a problem for them, right? But on the other hand, there does seem to perhaps be some hypocrisy going on as well.
I mean, I think to Kristen's point. And we saw this with the DEI fight. There was a reason that they did that first with Harvard, affirmative action, etc. Harvard is a ripe target. If you've never been there and you always know people who've been to Harvard, they'll tell you in the first 5 seconds that they went to Cambridge. They were in Cambridge. It's very annoying to the rest of us.
They went to a college outside Boston. I actually went to Cambridge, the original, for graduate school. So some people will say this to me. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not as highbrow as those of you who went to the second Cambridge, at least.
So you can see, just even in our conversation, it brings up some animus. But the wider context within which this sits is, of course, what is the purpose of what the administration is doing here? And we know from Chris Rufo, from Project 2025, and other ideas that have been put out there that they want to really take down anything that is viewed as the quote-unquote liberal establishment. And so what the administration asked of Harvard wasn't just about anti-Semitism. They asked things that were about who they admit, who gets tenure, things that are quite frankly, not the remit of the federal government. And if you think about how Republicans have accused Democrats over and over again of weaponizing government, of weaponizing the federal government, here we're seeing this administration actually push into something that has never really been done in the same way before.
I mean, Scott Jennings, that seems like a fair point. I mean, if Democrats were doing this in a way that conservatives felt like was taking on some of their interest in these higher institutions, I feel like I would hear you talking about, hey, government's supposed to be more limited.
Why would Democrats be complaining about Harvard? Like 96% of the political contributions from the faculty go to Democrats from Harvard. There's no diversity of thought among the faculty there. And by the way, I should say, I've had some experience with it. I was a fellow at the IOP. Kristen was as well. I taught a class at the Harvard Kennedy School for a number of semesters. I had a good experience, but I think...
But no diversity of thought, apparently.
But I think in recent years, particularly since October the 7th, the civil rights of these Jewish students on campus have clearly been violated. I don't think the university, Harvard, Columbia, a lot of these other Ivies have taken near enough steps to protect these students. They've been chased around campus, barred from buildings. Buildings have been taken over. I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on. And
this is what I love about this country. I love about this country the fact that we will always find somebody who will defend another group of people. Like whether it's Republicans or Democrats, they always find ways to defend people. What I can't stand about this country is it's always hid within, like, I don't want to say I almost said a meritocracy, but it's almost hid within so many underlying things that need to be discussed on the other end of it. Like, I think a lot of that anti-sentiment comes from the way people think that Israel is dealing with Palestine, and that conversation needs to be had too. You know, yeah. But this is a great conversation.
Here's the deal: they take federal money. They have a $53 billion endowment. They take federal money. If you want to continue to take federal money, you're going to have to listen to the people who dole it out, and that's the Trump administration who are standing up for these Jewish students. If they want to give up the federal money, you can create, I guess, the culture of hate that you want, and that's fine. But right now, they're entangled with the federal government, and they're going to have to deal with the president.
Adrian, I mean, I will say what the Trump administration is trying to do goes well beyond the anti-Semitism questions and the points that are very well taken from you. And I've spoken to a lot of Jewish students and families who are concerned about their Jewish students on these campuses. There are absolutely challenges there. But this is also DEI. It's hiring, admissions. It is looking at some of the viewpoint diversity. That seems like something we could argue about. But how do you see it?
Well, first of all, I think Chris is exactly right that this is something that this is where Trump is really good. His instincts are good. He knows he is delivering basically red meat to his base by saying, I'm going after a liberal institution like Harvard. I also agree with your point that what would happen if Republicans, all of a sudden, if Oral Roberts University or some of these super conservative, Republican-leaning organizations were also targeted by Democrats. So it goes both ways. I think the bottom line is this. This sets a dangerous precedent. If Harvard caves on this, which so far they have not, they've stood very firm and strong. If they cave on this, this sets a very dangerous precedent for universities that are not as well funded as Harvard. Harvard is the wealthiest university in the country, but what if we start going down the road with some of these universities that could be targeted that don't have the endowments that Harvard does? So I think, in the words of Barack Obama, who tweeted last night, applauds Harvard for standing strong against unlawful and ham-handed attempts by Donald Trump to stifle free speech and public education. And I think that's the point that Democrats need to continue to drive, and anyone who wants to support the freedom of education.
And the only thing I'll say, to Scott's point is as follows. He said he'll have to tangle with the president if you get federal money. That's assuming that somehow this federal money is the president's. And in fact, this federal money is the people's, and it is the people who pay taxes. And the idea of the federal government is that you are supposed to actually, look at the people of the United States and try to deal with them fairly.
And who do the people elect to be stewards of their money? The President of the United States.
Yes, but
He's
nobody,
standing up for these Jewish students.
Congress. Technically Congress.
Who has to spend the money? Who has to cut the checks? Who has to cut your check? Who has to faithfully execute the laws of this country? It's the president.
But if the
civil rights of these people being violated.
If you think about how dangerous that is too, you really sit down and think about it, that who has to enforce everything? The executive branch. And if he doesn't want to enforce certain laws or put things into effect, it's not going to happen. These 4 years are going to be fun for some people, man. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really tough for some people. Really is. Whoever disagrees with him is definitely in for a ride for these next 4 years.
This president is trying to weaponize the federal purse strings. And the reason that this president is trying to weaponize the federal purse strings is for political reasons. Now, you can agree with those political reasons or you cannot agree with those political reasons. But poll after poll is actually saying that what the American people actually care about is their pocketbook and their purse strings. Issues like DEI, issues like all these other, things that they're getting involved in. That poll's very, very low. There's just a poll that came out from UMass. 2%, 3% of the Americans care about these issues. This is something that Donald Trump is
Do the Jewish
investing
students
in.
care about it? Do their families care about it? He's standing up for people who have no advocates on these campuses. Nobody on these campuses will stand up for them because it's not in vogue to do so on the campus. Trump shows up and
This
stands
is
up
a
for the
wider
kids,
issue than
and that's why they're upset about it.
Absolutely. I think
This
we've all
is not
made it
about
very clear that we
anti-Semitism.
certainly stand with the Jewish students.
The only people who don't make it
Persecuted
clear are the
on
Harvard people. The Ivies, they don't make it clear. They don't make it clear.
I think we can all agree that
Well,
not
we're
all
here.
of these
They're
universities
there.
handle this, but to Casey's point, this is a much bigger, broader deal.
I'm gonna be honest. It does seem like it's all political, and that's not a good thing, 100%. However, though, you know what's interesting? They said 2 to 3% of Americans, I wrote that down, 2 to 3% of Americans actually care about a lot of these issues, right? The majority of people elected Trump because of grocery prices. You know, they wanted things to come down. The economy is why they elected Trump. I wonder how they feel now. Definitely interesting. All right, y'all. I'm out. Peace. Follow, subscribe. Y'all know what to do.